Welcome to episode 105 of the World Builders Anvil. Today's topic, goals and your word of the year. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
And we are coming to you today from Elevated Studio Pictures Incorporated. Yeah.
No, I was going to go with like New Year's Studio or
not Resolution Studio.
Not Resolution
I don't
Studio?
like Resolution.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say Resolution. I said New Year Studio.
Yeah.
Like the New Year Studio. Welcome to the New Year. Sort of thing.
Yeah, we'll go with that. New Year Studio.
Welcome to New Year Studio.
Yes.
You're listening to Jeff and Michael in the mornings. Or whatever time of day you happen to be listening to this.
Yes. And
Goals.
Goals today, we are going to talk about the kind of goal structure I use. Sort of for everything. This covers everything. Makes me a little sad sometimes, but you have to go over these things.
Goals make you sad?
No, you're erasing the board. Okay. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of vision, and this is something I
like heat vision.
Yes.
Sweet.
Episode done.
What is art? Like paintings and stuff? Yes, you're correct. Okay.
No, vision is this sort of vague idea of where do you want to be in 20 years? If you got to do the thing that you want to do, what would that look like? So what would your life look like if it was the way it wanted to be? Would you potentially be an author or a movie director? What would your life look like if it would be? And it's not strictly just something about your world building or your creative side, but it's your whole life. What would the life of the family be like? What would you do for
what would your financial life? What would your hobbies be? Like the whole thing.
Exactly. Like right now when you have this huge Powerball, everyone likes to think, what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the same thing as what would your life be like if you could make it anything you want? Pretty simple concept. Write this thing down. Keep this thing on a file easily accessible on your computer. It's a great thing to access whenever you get to a point where you're like, nah, I'm not going to work on what I want to work on today because, I'm just going to, fire around Facebook or not be productive, either creating content. I'm not going to, see my friends time. I'm just going to sort of hang out and be blue. And if that's your vision, then you're spot on. Go for it. But if it's not your vision, open up the vision file because you'd be surprised when you sort of go back. It reminds you why you are doing the things you're doing, your day job, what you're doing creatively. That reminds you of what you're doing.
Gets you charged up.
Yes, right.
Reminds you what you're committed to and what you want out of life.
Mm-hmm. And so whenever I do goals, that's something I like to think about. It's also a great thing to think about like in the morning when you're showering or something like that to kind of get your day started off correct. But a vision's a good thing to have because if it is not the motivation that will keep you moving forward, then you don't have the right vision because it's not really what you want to do. It's maybe what you think you want to do. It's maybe what you think you're expected to be. And it's not supposed to be those things. It should be what would you want your life to look like?
Like the irony of the way you're saying that is the basic gist is if you don't want to do it, you don't want to do that.
That's right.
Like if it's not motivating you, if thinking about what you want is not motivating you to want to do that thing, then you probably don't want it.
Well, it's not doing that
or you don't want it enough.
Because you have, they say the average time it takes for someone to be an overnight success is 8 years.
Oh, I was going to go with 10 to 15.
I heard 8 to 10. And that's for just overnight success.
Yes.
You're taking people who hit it quick. I think you're including there too, but
10 to 15 is longer than 8.
Mm-hmm. I know. I'm saying you're people who hit it quick. So if an overnight success is 8 years, then 10 to 15 is a little bit longer, but it's quick still.
I don't think that's quick. That's still a lot of time.
Well, the point being an overnight success would mean literally overnight. But if that takes 8 years, a relatively quick success would be a little bit longer.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
I didn't like your analogy.
Well,
I didn't follow it.
I think
we're all on the same page now. Yeah, I mean, they definitely say that about show business or any type of entertainment. Where look, a band doesn't get big overnight. They tour for years. They hone their skills for a very long time. Actors, same thing. Now look at John Hamm. John Hamm's a great example, a great recent example. Nobody knew who John Hamm was, and then he got on Mad Men, and now he's gigantic.
Yeah.
But he was a working actor for years. Nearly 20 years.
Oh, so he's not even close to an overnight success.
No. Yeah. He's been out there 10, 15 years doing character work, doing, day player stuff and commercials and all this other small stuff until he landed Mad Men. And now he's a household name.
Or one in new media that I know of, John Lee Dumas sort of popped on the scene a couple of years ago with the podcast Entrepreneur on Fire. And everyone's like, wow. And his show came out, was very professional. And people, it's probably one of the top podcasts on iTunes. And at least for business. And I don't know how that ranks against other categories or not. But the interesting thing was.
So it's probably a few classes below our podcast,
Yeah. Production quality, not quite as good, little under flashy compared to ours.
Not as many listeners,
Yeah. Pretty, a cute little podcast, we'll call it. And what? It's like before he did that, he was in masterminds with people who were successful, trying to put together a plan of how to achieve the success. What kinds of things did he need to mimic off of those people? What kind of habits they needed to develop? He went to a voice coach. So unlike you,
who has an astoundingly wonderful natural voice,
he had to work on it.
That's exactly what you were going to say. I get a lot of compliments on my voice.
You do. You have a radio voice.
I don't think I do. I listen, when I listen to my voice back, I think I sound much younger. When I'm speaking, I feel like I still sound like I did when I was in high school. I feel like I sound like a child, even though I'm going to be 40 this year.
I know, and if anyone would look at you and then they would think of the voice that you sound recorded as like, that old guy can talk like that. Wow.
See, I don't hear myself that way. Even when I'm listening to my voice, because I've gotten compliments on my speaking voice for years. I mean, ever since I was younger. And I had a friend of mine actually. When we get deeper into goals, I'll probably bring up Landmark. I had a Landmark friend who was like, "You got to do voiceover. You should be recording your voice somehow because you have a great voice."
Yeah.
So.
And yes,
so he went to voice training. He was creating his success. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an accident. Here's a great one that this was a big sales thing. It's like there's no millionaire out there unless they won their money through the Powerball. Especially no businessman, no entrepreneur who's doing very well for himself that wakes up surprised.
Yeah,
it was a plan. Yeah. They didn't wake up one day and go, "Holy crap! I have a huge house and tons of money and a great car." Right. It was a plan. They planned it out and they did it. And even creative ventures are the same thing. It's still business. Yes. You still have to plan it out.
There's a business side and then there's a creative side. And there's actually a great one too, where I think it might have been Pat Flynn, another internet entrepreneur, who essentially had a video thing where he was ranting about what you were just saying. And he was like, listen, you can show me a video of somebody sitting on the beach, in Mexico, working for 15 minutes a day and making $50 million after 2 months, and I can show you marketing. But if you can find someone who actually did it, please introduce me.
Right.
And he's very successful, but he worked very hard, and over the years, he makes a lot of money. But it takes time, and then you have to build upon your own success. And that's one of the reasons why we're kind of going through this, is because what does that look like? Because most people, imagine listening to the show, want to spend more time in their creative world.
Yeah. Do the work that you like to do.
Yeah.
If you don't like to do it, then maybe that's not what you actually want to do.
And it might be a good day job. It might help you finance yourself to get there.
Right.
But you need a plan to get off of there. So there's a couple different kinds of goals that you want to do. And the goals are things that should all push you towards your vision. And a good way to think about it, when you're done setting goals, when it'll take about a year to get there. And if you keep asking yourself how do I get that house with 7,000 square feet? when I live in an apartment with 200, and you come up with a response. And then if you can ask yourself, how do I do that? That's another level.
But and what you're doing is you're working backwards time-wise. Like
yes.
if the 7,000 square foot house is, say, 10 years from now, then I know in 5 years I need to be at X.
Exactly.
And if I need to be at X in 5 years, I need to be at Y in 2 years. Yeah. So, and that should give me an idea of what I need to start working on right now.
Exactly. But how and why are great questions to always ask yourself whenever you're going through these processes. Why is the question I ask myself when I'm stuck and I'm trying to get through something?
Such as?
Well, why do they do that?
Why? Why did who do what?
Anything. So it's actually a classic Toyota troubleshooting technique is the 5 whys, I think is what they call it. Mm-hmm. And so if let's say, if I have a problem with a piece of software I'm working on and there's a bug, say, why would this happen? And that might lead me to a certain part of technology or a certain place somewhere it might have happened with the application. Then I'm like, but why would that have happened here? What was going on that made it happen here? And it's a way to sort of drill into a problem to get to the root cause. And then I use how, on the other hand, to get to my goals. Because you need to know how to do something, because goals are how are you going to do it? That's why. And you can do stuff like create really good goals. And goals I use as a annual kind of measurement.
I want to throw a quick thing about how and goal, because you reminded me of something. Feel free to set a goal even if you don't know how you're going to do it yet.
Yes.
Like set the goal, figure out how later.
Yes. Yes, even though you'll probably get to there from how do I do there.
You probably
get
will.
to a point where it's something that's maybe achievable in a year.
But there's tons of people, some very successful people, that they set goals. They have no idea how they're going to accomplish them.
Yeah.
But they set the goal anyway.
Yes, and one of the things I found in looking at people who are successful on the internet or in media, most of them act very intentionally with what they're doing. They're not posting to Facebook to make friends. Or they're not tweeting out to make friends. They're tweeting out to interact with individuals, their fan base.
They're building a fan base.
They have a plan on how they're doing that. And if you're early and you're starting off, you can't afford a media company to help you come up with that. You have to keep in mind is who's your audience. That avatar thing.
There's your avatar, yeah.
And where is my avatar? But the thing is, when you get to a goal, for me, a goal is an annual thing to reach those 5 and 10 year plans of yours, which will help you get to your vision. One thing to keep in mind is your vision might change over time. Where you want to be in 20 years when you're 20 and 30 might not be the same thing, which is another important reason why you need to revisit it, because it might lose its impact because it's no longer relevant. Either you achieve it much earlier than you expect, or what you're looking for in life changes. So when you get to a goal, there's this thing called SMART goals. And I don't want to go heavily into SMART goals because that could take at least one episode, and that's not really the show.
Do you want to at least define, because I don't even know what you're talking about.
A SMART goal is essentially a way to create a functioning goal. How you get through something.
So is that more like a short-term goal?
No, it's more like, what do goals need to have? And I'll quickly...
You know what? Reference, you're pulling up a link right now?
Yeah.
So just reference the link so people can go look it up for themselves, and we'll keep moving.
Well, actually, what I'll do is, if you go to... I'm on another podcast with my wife called Small Biz Life.
I can't believe you're doing that, because I intended to plug that show on this episode, because we keep forgetting to plug it.
Yeah. And this is a perfect one to come over. So for the business side of what you're doing on the internet, if that's what your goal is, or if you're an author, part of your job is marketing, even if you get published. So you are a business and a creative side. But just very quickly, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timeliness. Those are the elements every goal needs.
And say it again.
Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And that's for your goals. That's the thing you want to get to in a year. Because you need a plan, you need intention on how to get there. And from there, those to me are the most difficult steps. And you have goals for all kinds of reasons. personal goals, goals for you, your friends, your family, things you want to attain within you. Unless you want to be an unbalanced person, you need to cover all aspects of your life when you're goal creating. You should maybe have 3 to 5 goals, and they got to be all over the spectrum, because if you forget about your family to be creative, you forget about work to be creative, you're going to maybe create a lot of great creative stuff and lose your family, lose your friends. So you need to be balanced when you create goals. 3 to 5, maybe 3 to 8, depending on where you're at and how tough some of those goals are to achieve. Business goals, if you're a new author, or you're creating a website to talk about role-playing games, or maybe you do videos basically showing people how to play games. And I'm a geek. I kind of watch those sometimes.
I really should get into doing that, because I love that stuff.
You should, and you'd probably do very good. Great thing to do on YouTube. And there's so many people who are always looking for stuff.
I just feel like that market's saturated.
It is, but the thing to remember is that doesn't mean there isn't room for more. And I forget the exact percentages here, but someone said, like, if you find an author who, is a very prolific author, say Stephen King, and you read through all of his books, you got maybe a year or two worth of books to read. I'm saying
a year.
I'm saying reading just like that's all you do.
Oh, okay. I was going to say,
yeah.
Stephen King's got a lot of material.
But what I'm saying is, there's a defined period of time in which you can read his material, and then you run out.
Yes.
So people are looking for people to either cover games in ways that don't do it. And a great way to do is find the people out there that are covering, like, say, if you do a specific game, or if you do multiple games, go look at some of what people are doing. You got to find a way to differentiate yourself and to fit better into the community. But there's room for audience, and probably the people who are watching their channel are going to be watching your channel and maybe another channel. Who knows? The thing is, you have to have good business goals. It's like, and don't get caught up in silly things. Always think what the ultimate purpose of the business is. And early on, it's to sort of grow your platform. So it's not about making money, but at a certain point, when you start creating products, if you have books, or you create supplements, or you need people to watch ads,
T-shirts
to make money
for a podcast,
T-shirts for a podcast. When you do stuff like that, it's ultimately about making revenue, and then it's about streamlining the business to make it simpler. But don't get stuck on, like, I want 20,000 Twitter followers. If you want 20,000 Twitter followers, join Twitter, comment a lot. You'll have about 50 friends who join you. And when you look at their profile, they'll talk about exactly how much it costs to have a follower. Having a follower is not a hard thing. Having engaged followers, that's really the goal, because that's really your audience. And you can really gauge, if you do it naturally, what size your audience is by the growth and decline of your followers.
Yeah, and you don't need, like, millions and millions of followers to make a living.
No.
In a creative industry. Like, if you're trying to sell books, sell movies, or what have you, you do need a loyal fan base.
Yeah.
But it is better to have a small, very loyal fan base than a really large, half-assed fan base.
There's a great guy who I've taken some online courses with, Tim Graw. And he does author book launches for sort of your New York Times best-selling people. And then he sells courses on his methodology to scale it out. So schmoes like me, who don't have a lot of money to pay him, can, use some of the techniques to aid ourselves. Great person if you're looking to creatively expand, and make some money off of your creativity. And one of the things he said is, I would rather have a list of 10,000 loyal people than a list of 200,000 people who don't pay attention to you. Because, and ultimately too, email is always stronger than social media. It's a direct interaction with individuals. Social media is nice, but the point of it is not to sell stuff. Most people aren't on social media. They don't go to Twitter. They don't go to Facebook to buy stuff.
I feel like a lot of social media these days has turned into junk mail. Where, like, my wife has she has felt obligated to get into social media for her business. but she can't stand it. She doesn't like using it. She doesn't feel that, and I don't see any results from her doing it. So like we talked about it finally, and she's like, she's not gonna use her.
From statistics, you will probably not ever have a large money generation through social media.
Yeah.
And Apple does not do social media to sell iPhones. Social media is usually a way to build up engagement with the fan base you have. And then people will they'll do stuff like, well, if I follow this person, they might follow me back. And then
that's so artificial.
All a complete waste.
Yeah, that's how I see it.
And I kind of did that when I first started, and I've stopped doing that. And my fan base still grows, but I'm more confident that the fans I'm getting now are paying more attention. Where like you'd find sometimes like, oh, I follow that person, they follow me back, and then 3 weeks later they silently stop following you because they're just trying to build up their numbers.
They're just trying to build up numbers, yeah.
And I don't listen to them, and they don't listen to me, so we probably should neither one be following each other. There is no point.
Yeah.
And that's an easy trap to get caught into because you feel like big, oh, I've just reached 500, I've just reached 1,000, I've reached 10,000. But if they're not engaged, if they're not interested in what you're doing, who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't. If it doesn't affect your bottom line, i.e., improve your listenership or your following, as far as your whatever your creative endeavor is, then it's really just it's St. Elmo's fire. It's artificial nothing. It's electric noise.
There's ultimately one effective way to sell stuff online still, unless you're pornography, and that is through email. That's it. And even that, if the emails that you send out to people don't have great content that make their life better for whoever your market is, whoever your avatar is, they will not care about your emails, and they might not unsubscribe, but they might just stop opening them. You know, so it's like you just can't throw an email out every week and say, hey, here are the next 3 things to buy, which that might be a little bit less of the case. You can probably do a lot more soft selling if you're like a visual artist or maybe a musician where you're sharing out the work you're working on, and you might actually get leads back that way. But like, you know, if you're an author and the main point of every email you put out is to buy your latest book, people might read 2, maybe 3 of your emails, and then they're done. You know, they're engaging with you as a creative person probably because of your personality is attractive to them and your work. Because your work, no matter how good it is, will only get their attention once. You are what makes them a fan. And if both of those things have synergy with people, they will want to engage with you. And you'll be surprised the kinds of stuff that they will do to help you. I have no idea how many retweets I had last year because after a while, I tried to track it for a while, and I had so many engaged people when I was really active originally that I lost track of it. And I appreciate every one of them. But that's what I want from, I'd rather have 500 fans that share my stuff out than, you know, the 1,500 I have now where, you know, I get the same number of shares from. You know, if people don't listen or don't care what I have to say because they're either not interested in what my content or they're not interested in the content I'm providing or my personality, don't follow. So please follow. Please follow.
Please follow. and better yet, please engage because I don't even know. I mean, Jeff really is the gatekeeper of the website. Like I don't even pay attention to it to be honest.
Yes.
And I'd like to be more engaged. I have no idea what kind of contact you have with our listenership because I don't see any of it.
Most of it I get through email.
Do you?
And it's the email subscribers.
Can they email me on it? Because I don't even know.
No, because
didn't you set me up with an email?
I set up with an email through the thing, but when the emails go out through the service I use, the newsletter service, I think it's only to one account. I'll see if I can add you to that as well too.
Yeah, because I would love to hear from listeners.
But
I would
emails
love to engage with the listeners.
I always ask a question, and I love it when people respond with actual answers. You know, it's a great way for me to start developing a relationship. And that's kind of what I like to do because I like to talk about this stuff if you haven't noticed yet.
Yeah, I've noticed that. And I have a Twitter, but I don't use it. I really don't. I've tried to get into it, but it's not my thing.
And that's one of the biggest things I always hear from people that like some social media people who I think are bad will be like, you need to be in every social media platform available because it's all free stuff. And that's
exhausting.
Bogus.
It's exhausting.
It's bogus. Find what you like Maybe it's YouTube, which people always forget is a social media. It's actually the world's largest social media, and no one realizes it's even that. But it's a very powerful social media. YouTube, Instagram, whatever you like doing, do that. The more engaged you are in it, the more likely you are to get into the interaction side with people. I like Twitter. There are a lot of people who are very similar to me on Twitter. I could be in Reddit, but Reddit,
let's be fair, Jeff. There's no one similar to you. No one just like you. You are very individual.
I'm very special, as my mom used to say before she started crying. Okay. So now back.
Yeah, we were getting way off subject.
We got way off subject. So we were covering goals with types of goals.
You were covering vision. We mentioned SMART goals, and then
we started going through types of goals to have. All right. And we had gone through personal and business. Creative, that's more simple. I want to create a book this year. I want to do 3 books this year. And spiritual. And that's maybe not for everyone, but if you have a spiritual side to you, you should have goals there as well, too. That's part of your life. That's part of who you are. If you're not spiritual, it gives you another goal for creative or personal, whichever you prefer, I guess, or business. Now, once you have your goals set for the year, and I say I have a vision of I want to be a recognized New York Times bestselling writer in 20 years that has 3 to 5 shows on HBO.
By the end of the year?
No, this is my vision.
I see. This is your vision.
And of course, my books won't include explicit sex, but because they are on HBO, they will have to add it in.
They'll have to add it in. Sure.
So,
but the books can imply like there was a sex scene here, there was a sex scene there, whatever.
And that's kind of, if I ever get into those kind of areas of my books where the last one I did was for younger people, so it would be really awkward. But, maybe when they start getting older, there might be, but I don't think I'm ever going to be explicit.
It's like a Willow style story, but we're just going to add tons of like gratuitous sex to it.
But it's like
it's like E.T. but with lots of porn.
I know, boy, E.T. phone home.
Whoa, hey now, Elliot.
So so to do that, I figure my intermediate goal, maybe my long-term goal, I need a library of books. Having 0 books in 20 years will mean it's impossible for me to have achieved my goal. If I'm really lucky, 1 book, everyone loves it, everyone buys it, that would be wonderful. But more than likely, most authors usually
you have to have a stable.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe you have a goal that you want to have in 10 years, you want to have 30 books. And that's 3 books a year.
3 books a year.
It'd be very tough if you're a part-time person like me, but let's say you have a better financial circumstance and you don't have to do that. That would be a smart goal if that was your vision to be that New York Times bestseller, is to build up that stable. If you follow someone like Tim Graw and how he sells not only for the peak at the beginning, but to maintain sales for all of your books throughout. So, most books when they initially launch, they'll have a huge spike for like the first month or 2, and they drop to almost nothing forever. If you work through engagement and building reputation with other influencers online, maybe you can maintain a certain level of sales, new sales for those books all of the time. And that's probably a better place to be, because then if you have a stable of 30 books where you're selling 500 of each a month, that's a pretty good day or a month. Or a day if you can do that in a day.
Certainly a good day.
So now, once you've selected the goals that you have, what I always like to do is there are tons of things that you need to get done in a week. And I use this software called Nozbe, and I put in like things I need to get done. It's a task app. But then I create what I call action items. Every week I try and have 1 action item per goal. If I know I'm going to have more time, I'll give myself more. Or if I'm focusing more on 1 goal at this point than another one, all action items might go towards only 1 of my goals. But that way, these are 5 items every week that get you closer to your goals. They're not doing maintenance stuff. They're not updating your social media page. They're not doing that kind of work. They are things that will move you towards your goal. So maybe it's, finishing 2 chapters a week or whatever your writing goal is. That would be an action item. Whatever you want to get done for that week, because that guarantees that if you can get all 5 of those things done every week, if I plan it right, I've hit all my goals. If I hit all my goals, I hit my intermediate, my long-term goal. And if I hit those, hopefully I hit my vision. And if not, you're doing something you love. Hurrah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with aiming for a goal and missing it.
Yes.
Like, you can still keep working towards it.
Yes.
Like, the most important thing that I find that you had mentioned it briefly when you mentioned the smart style goals, the 5 things there, is a time period.
Yes.
So have a goal. You say, like, oh, well, I want to be, like, one of my goals is I want to be really good at playing guitar. Well, I could just say, well, I want to be really good at playing guitar. That is way too generic. That's not specific enough. And it doesn't have a time period.
That's where the M comes into measurable.
Yeah. So what I've just created for myself, I wrote down here, is I want to know I want to be able to play 10 songs by the end of this year.
Oh, I thought you were going to write 10 ballads to me.
No. I've got so many sonnets though, Jeff. All the poetry I write about you. So, but 10 songs. Now that might not sound like a lot, but I've just started playing guitar. I can't even play a song right now. I'm learning a couple of intros. And I'm learning a little bit in chords and some chord progression and some different fingering techniques and, of course, strumming techniques and tempo and the whole 9. But I'm nowhere near ready to play a song. I have a couple of very simplistic stuff that I'm working on that you'd be surprised how many big rock songs they're not actually made up of a whole lot musically. Yeah. So there are some things that I'm learning, but I'd like to be able to play 10 songs by the end of this year. So to break that down really quickly, that means I should at least be approaching 5 by the summertime. Yeah. So,
and one of those things too, is like a lot of times when you start reaching goals like that, where you're trying to attain a certain level of skill in something, when you're measuring it out, maybe the first song takes you 3 months, and then the second song takes you.
Right. I was going to say that, like, if I'm not going to learn, maybe I'm not learning 5 songs by the summertime, but maybe I'm getting all the techniques down so that I really nail all 10 in the latter, in like the 4th quarter of the year.
And part of that, we're not really talking about that today. If you plan it correctly, you can sort of know these are all the techniques I know for these 10 songs.
Right.
And that makes it a much smarter goal, as they would say it in Boston.
Smarter.
Because you then know exactly what you have to learn to be able to then do the songs.
And part of that just to give you some just a little bit of guitar, there's like 4 magic chords that are basically like, if you learn these 4 chords, you can play like 80% of the songs that you hear on the radio. So like my teacher is like, we're going to work on these first. Like with these 4,
we'll start on this.
You can play a ton of stuff. So,
and part of that too is, when you have goals to learn new skills, don't be afraid to go to experts, especially with the internet today.
Go to people that know it. Yeah, don't try to just figure it all out blindly.
Because you might get there, but the thing is, if you know people who do it, interact with them, don't be afraid if you have the budget to be able to go to other people who have that skill.
Yeah.
It's like I spent money over the last couple of years learning more about how to interact online from a business standpoint.
Learn to avoid the problems that they already discovered and surpassed. Right. They spent more time going through that. Learn from the mistakes of other people. Like there's no way I could just generate guitar skill if you just handed me a guitar. I couldn't figure out how to play that stuff. I mean, I can look at videos and what have you, and I have software at home, of course, because I'm a nerd. I have a guitar software thing that I use as well. But I sit with my teacher for 1/2 hour a week, and that half hour is way more valuable than anything else I do, because just being around him and having him see little things I'm doing wrong and point out like trip hazards, that his experience is infinitely more valuable to my progress than me bashing my head up against the wall just researching stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Most definitely. When I said, what is the word of the year? Word of the year, and I kind of do this at 2 levels when I work. I'm an IT analyst, and so I typically work on projects from the birth from the business area until the software is retired down the road, or I retire, one of the 2. And so a lot of times when I create a new project, I come up with the sentence for that project. It is a one-line sentence that will actually sum up what is the point of this project. And that anytime people start bringing information, I run it through this sentence filter to say, does this really
service the sentence?
Does it service this sentence and ergo the project? And I will fight for it depending on whether or not it achieves that goal for me. And the word of the year is the same idea to your goals. And it's one word, if you look at all of the goals in your life, that sums up where you want to be at the end of this year. And that word, print it out, make it as large as you can on a Word document, make it a big font, turn it sideways, print it out, slap it right behind the monitor on your computer or wherever you spend the most time. So when you sit down at that computer, you see that word sitting right over the monitor and it says Italy. Maybe that's your word of the year because you're trying to go on a trip to Italy at the end of the year. Well, these are the things you need to do to help get to your trip in Italy. So it's a one-word motivator that whenever you see that word, create a little image for your phone, make it your phone background, just one word that helps encapsulate all of your goals for the year. In general, where do you want to be in the year?
Could it be a hyphenated word?
No. So what you want to do is make sure that if the word you have is hyphened, becomes a lot more common use in the English language, because then we drop the hyphens and we just push the two words together. Game on. Okay.
So I want you actually to give me a little bit more on the word of the year.
Sure.
Should the word of the year be the goal?
No.
Or could it be a theme
it's
for the goal?
It's more of the theme. It's the theme of, in general, where you're moving. And that's kind of what you're shooting for. So let's say your goal is to move. Then maybe the word for the year is move. And there are goals that will help you reach that. And some of your goals might not be directly related to it, but it's sort of your theme for the year. That's probably a little bit better word for it.
Because I feel like one of my things is I want to get debt free. I feel that I need to change that.
Well, in this house, you're allowed to actually use that as your word.
Right. But I also feel that I'm also a subscriber to the philosophy of The Secret. And I feel like debt free is not how I should be focusing. I should be focusing on financial freedom as opposed to debt free.
Well, because I mean, the thing is, it's kind of and John Acuff will talk about this in his book Smart, which is, what is your why? And that's kind of the same thing. It's, why are you doing what you're doing? And that's your vision,
I feel like this almost falls into our character. You're the character. What's your motivation?
Yes.
Why are you motivated? Why do you want to do what you want to do? And
essentially, and for the word of your year, it sums you up for this next upcoming year. And now, one little tidbit, and then I'm going to let Mike talk a little bit about one thing he wants to. We try and do that every 5 episodes.
It's Michael.
And no, well, if your name is not Mike, you don't get to do that.
But how many episodes until Michael gets to talk?
It's every 10.
10. Oh. Well, so there could be some overlap. Could this be the 10th?
I think it is.
Well, it is 105.
If that's divisible by 10.
It's divisible by 10. 0.5.
New math. Okay.
I was just listening to that today. For those of you not aware, you should go on the internet and look up Tom Lehrer New Math.
Okay. Now, here's one of my things. Don't make New Year's resolutions. Here's why. And it's not that what you're going to make the resolution on isn't good. The problem is, if there's something you really want to achieve, you want to lose weight, you want to write your first novel, you want to stop smoking, you want to pick 50 friends' noses, whatever it is.
That was your high school achievement, actually.
I got that done in grade school.
Yeah.
I was an early achiever. And the problem is to say, if it's I want to lose weight, I'll wait to January 1st. Maybe it's early December, but January 1st.
So you go on a bender half of December.
And not only that, though, by the time you get there, you didn't really have the dedication to do it because you never started. And you're less likely to start when you get there. So especially if it's something important to you, maybe you already have your 3 to 5 goals, or maybe 5, 6, 8 goals. Maybe you have your goals already set out. If there's something that comes up that either due to life circumstance or change in yourself, don't be afraid to change your goal. Maybe you'll realize that one of your goals is not going to get you to where you want to go. Drop that goal and replace it with something else. Don't wait. Don't create some artificial excuse to not start for 10, 20, 30 days or a month or two. If it's really so important that you want to do it, don't be afraid to go. Just start it. And if you haven't read the book, start.
Right in line with that, I want to also point out that if you create a goal, you create a commitment out of that. And the first thing that pops up once you commit yourself to something is opposition to that commitment. As soon as you create a thing, let's say you decide, I want to lose some weight, so I'm gonna cut back on sugar, which is one of the things that I'm doing. I've decided to cut way back on sugar. I don't know exactly what that. I haven't made that quantifiable, the measurement of that, but definitely I'm not eating like all the candy. Like I know I like candy, I have a little bit of chocolate like every single day. Not like I'm like, pounding Snicker bars every day, but I'll have a little something like there's a candy jar or candy dish at work. So I'll pick
pop a couple.
Exactly. Little stuff like that. So what happens when you commit to something like that? Immediately there is an opposition to that. Like the very next day, there was a big Oreo, like a baked Oreo like treat thing with whipped cream and pudding and all sorts of jazz in the fridge in our break room. And someone's like, "Oh, big Oreo treat upstairs, free for all for everybody." And I'm just like, "Oh man, that looks amazing." But I didn't eat any of it. Yeah. So immediately I'm just like, "Okay, well I'm gonna cut back sugar." Poof, a bunch of free sugar pops right in my lap. Yeah. You know what I mean? So if you say, "Oh well, I'm going to cut back on something or I'm going to commit to something," you're because you've created this distinction in your perspective. You've focused in on something in your life. And because of that, other things regarding that focus are going to crop up and they're going to go against it. That's where you need to make a choice. That's where you need to choose. Are you sticking to this? And my bit is, if you care about it and you want to do it, you stick to it, and whatever the opposition is, you get around it. Yeah. Oh, free sugar. Oh, look, they're giving out free chocolate cakes today. They've never given out free chocolate cakes in my entire life, but there's free chocolate cakes here, and they're gourmet, and man, I want a free chocolate cake because it's free. If it's for free, it's for me. But no, it goes against my anti-sugar goal. Yeah. So I got to say no to it. So anything like that, if you're like, well, okay, my commitment is to write, what's a good word count for a day?
Well, I think it depends on how much time
words. Well, no, just give me a generic goal, like 1,000 words a day.
2,000, I do time, not words, but let's say for a part-time writer, 1,000 words.
Okay,
a day.
Well that's what I said. So let's say, for sake of argument, you're committed to writing 1,000 words a day, and then someone offers you free tickets to like one of your favorite shows. Like you get there's free they're playing the new Star Wars for free for one sitting tonight. Is for the first 500 people, and a guy who can get you in.
And you get a free Oreo cake.
And you get a free Oreo chocolate cake. So all of these things, but it's going against your goal because that is the only time in your evening that you've allotted to write. You have to make sacrifices for your goals. Yeah. And sometimes you won't have to, but generally you have to be willing to. You have to be willing to acknowledge that sometimes you're going to have to let go of something else that you do want to get to the goal that you really want. Like the weight goals are common. What they always say is that no treat tastes as good as being fit feels. So
yeah, right.
I don't know if I agree with that either, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. The point is that your immediate versus you have to weigh what you want most versus what you want right now.
And a very good example of this was, if you listen to the last episode, you might realize that Mike sucks. Or he did. He doesn't anymore because I've seen it Star Wars now.
Just listening to that episode today, getting reminded how Jeff was giving me a hard time about watching Star Wars. First.
Mike actually invited, I think you tried to get me to come along.
I think I did, actually. Yeah.
And I said no, which was really tough for me because I really wanted to go see Star Wars. I had content development I had to get done. I was getting ready to go on vacation.
That's true. It was right before you went on vacation.
It was right before I went on vacation. And so I needed to get content done, what I promised to do. And that's why I said no, which it hurt me. And then I think
because you and I,
this kind of goes back to your chocolate comment, because then my friend John contacts me. I think that weekend, Saturday morning, basically seeing if Chris and I wanted to go see Star Wars with them. Mm-hmm. And once again, I'm just like, oh, yeah, no.
Yes, I want to, but no, I won't.
Yes. And I was proud of myself for not doing it, because I am a huge Star Wars fan, and I'm not one of those people who are dressing up in Jedi garb, but I really love Star Wars.
It's only because he'd prefer to dress up as a Sith.
If you want to get to your vision, you have to make sacrifices, and you have to respect your time. No one else will respect your goals and the time commitments you set for yourself if you do not. So if you drop whatever you have planned at the first, suggestion from any friend, anyone in your family, never get mad at them for offering, because you're the person, you're really saying to yourself that what you want to do is interact with your friends and family as much as you can right now. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, we're not trying to make you wrong about it.
But that is what you want to do, not get to your vision. Unless you're already at your vision, in which case you shouldn't have the same vision where you are, because that's kind of boring. If you do have the same thing, I'm going to tell you this now near the end of the episode, don't listen to the episode.
The only other thing that I wanted to put out there is live into your future, and the concept of that is partly laying out the goal and then doing a reverse timeline to let you know what you should be doing now. So if your goal is 5 years out, you say, this is what I need to do to get to 5 years. This is what I need. This is where I need to be in 3 years. This is where I need to be in 1 year. This is what I need to be doing now. But also, there's like a creating your own reality aspect. Like for sake of argument, I mean, one of my goals is not to be a novelist, but let's say it was. Mm-hmm. Then start adopting that mindset. So if you say, I'm going to write a novel, well, then say to yourself right now and to others, create it as your reality that you are a novelist. You just haven't completed your novel yet. Yeah. So if someone says, well, what are you doing? So, well, I'm a novelist. Okay, well, what have you written? I'm working on it now. So, and I'm stealing this school of thought from Kevin Smith, who, when he finally realized that he wanted to be a filmmaker, he said to his sister, like, oh, I want to be a filmmaker. She said, well, you are a filmmaker. He's like, I know, I want to be a filmmaker. She's like, no, say that you are a filmmaker. You just haven't made a film yet.
And to back him up, there are some authors out there who refuse to, oh, that's so different, it's not writing. Okay. Go right now to Jeffrey Goins, that's Goins' website. I will put a link to it in my show. Download his manifesto and read it. Because what makes a writer? Someone who writes. Mm-hmm. And from there, what you do with it, that's up to you. If you want to become an author, that's someone who writes that sells their stuff. Mm-hmm. There is no excuse. There's not, I'm an aspiring writer. That is an excuse you're giving yourself ahead of time to not write.
And I don't call myself a writer anymore because I don't write anymore.
But you are a writer because you do write.
I don't though.
But you do sometimes.
I create content, but I don't really write anymore. I used to write. And I actually do see a few projects this year where I am going to be writing, like for more, even just what we did show planning the other day. I see myself doing some writing and some research for some of the upcoming shows, and I'm going to do a little writing for that. I know I'm going to. So that's going to be a little.
Because you're a writer.
I don't think it's fair.
Listen to the fear.
It's not one of my goals, Jeff.
It doesn't need to be.
I know, but
being a writer is someone who writes.
Right, and I don't.
But you do it for utilitarian reasons, but you still do it.
What I'm going to boldly state and claim and put out there as a goal is that I'm going to start calling myself a musician.
Watch out, Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny's got nothing to worry about.
That would be what an awesome goal to get to that level of guitar playing.
Yeah,
that's a great vision.
I would love that. That's not my vision though. Like my vision in music for me is I would love, like I don't look at myself as potentially being a band member. Like, I just want to play guitar. I see myself as more of like playing like sort of John Mayer sort of stuff, like just me, myself, and I. Maybe I'd be willing to get into a band if I got some good people that I liked being around, because I've had many band friends and friends being in music. But my vision is I would like to be a serviceable guitar player. I don't see myself as a rock star. I'm not shooting for that.
I didn't mean it so much like that. I just meant like skill-wise on a guitar, because he's a very skilled guitarist.
Yes.
Yeah. But there are several skilled guitarists, and what do? They play guitar.
They play guitar, yeah. And that's what I need to get better at, is not a better skilled guitarist. I need to get better at practicing, because I don't practice anywhere near as much as I should be. Mm-hmm. So if I want to learn, my goal, like I'm saying it right here on the show, is to be able to fully play 10 songs by the end of this year. I got to practice more.
Yeah.
So, because I only practice probably 2 times a week. I should be practicing every day.
And now for the world building task of the week. Oh, that's usually what I say, isn't it?
Well, I know, but you're looking at me like I should be reading it, but I can't read your writing, so you're going to have to say it, because I have no idea what that says.
You could read that, because I have no idea what it says. It says list your world building needs. One of the things that you need to do... I'm
going to say that slower, because you really plowed through that. List your world building needs.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is one of the things, to help move forward is you need to know what you need. And it's very easy going, okay, I'm done with this. What do I do next? That's a good way to not get anything done, because you're like, well, I don't have anything to do right now. I'll think of it later. So sit down, and if there's like you're working on a role-playing game supplement, or a role-playing game, or a book, or a campaign for your friends, list out the things that you need to get started. And that could vary from you. You might not be quite as weird as I am and have the weird detail stuff up front. Maybe you come across it as you go on. Maybe you leave it up to the imagination of the people. However you do it, list down your needs, and understand that might change a little bit. The good thing is when you have the list and you come up with something new, you can add it to it. And it doesn't need to cover everything. Get out of your head onto paper what you need world building wise to get towards your creative goals for the year.
And what's the real world task? It actually says
goat it, I think.
It says goat it.
So you have to, I think that means you have to taunt your list.
Taunt a goat?
No, taunt.
Oh, goat, like goat someone into fighting.
Well, you're goating your list.
You're goating your list.
So you're going to goat your list to start a fight with your list.
I don't know if that's what you meant by that.
Oh, I think I said goal it. I crossed the L. I'm going to go with that.
Goal it.
So set up a goal for the world building side. Maybe it's I want to finish 2 cultures, or I want to finish my world so I can start writing. Help get those excuses out of your way. So have a goal for your world building needs. If what you're doing involves world building, have a goal for that.
And if you see the excuse, like, be cognizant of that, because the excuse is the opposition I was talking about earlier. There's always a reason not to do it. Mm-hmm. So forget that reason, ignore that reason, go around it, over it, through it, because that's the opposition I'm talking about. It's not always going to be an outside influence. A lot of times the thing that stops you from doing something is you. Mm-hmm. So get over it and do it.
And you are the problem. It is fear.
But you are also the solution.
Yes. And if you are stuck because of fear, you have to read the book Start. You have to read the book Start, because it's all about the fears in your head that hold you back from being the person you want to be. And that person might be a great musician in your bedroom. It doesn't matter. You get to determine what that is. But whatever that goal is, if you're not moving towards it, it's because of fear. And even someone like me, where I've read the book, I consciously take steps to alleviate the fear. I get caught up in it. Just like it's human nature. That's why the book is an important read. If you're not moving the way you want to in your life, stop the podcast, go to gardul.com/Amazon, or go to the show notes where there'll be a link to this book called Start. Read this book, overcome your fear, start moving forward to be the person you want to be.
And finally, the tease. And I actually want to tack something onto the tease. So.
Okay. Now, the teases, and this is something that came up by accident when I was world building on vacation. I was actually creating...
That's how good you are. You build worlds on vacation. You're not even working on it, and you're building it.
Well, actually, I was working on it. I had a notebook.
No, but I mean, but you're on vacation. You're not like, sitting down and you're creating worlds.
The power. Now, I was actually working on a different culture, but their culture, I knew their alphabet and part of their language is influenced by another culture who I did not have a language for. I had ideas for it in my head. And this was the Siren. I was working on their language, but I'm like, I really need the basic ideas of the Mysteritas language to be able to do it.
To influence it, because that's where
because the symbology of their early alphabet is based off of Mysteritas. So I was sitting there, creating some very basic structures for their language. It's a very complicated language. It's based on Mayan, and it's an Elvish language in my world. And to me, when you live a really long time, you can have really complicated stuff. Like their number system. Okay, our number system is what we call base 10, 0 to 9. Mm-hmm. We have essentially 10 symbols that cover everything.
Right, but to be super clear, not only do we have symbols 0 through 9, because there are non-10 base systems that also have that, but each decimal placing is representative 10 of the prior place. Unlike hexadecimal, which is similar, but each is 6. 8. No, hexa is 16.
Oh, hexi.
Yeah, hexa.
Oh, they said hexa.
No, hexa is 16.
Yeah.
So, continue.
Yeah, exactly. So, their number system ended up being base 105.
So each decimal point is 105 of the prior.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Or former, rather.
Yeah. So if you have a 2-digit number, that's really high.
Yeah. A 2-digit number is very high.
It's well past the hundreds place.
It's funny that you should be mentioning this because I have an IT guy at work, and of course, Fridays are more casual. So he wore a T-shirt today. Normally, he's in a button-down shirt, and his shirt says, "There are 10 kinds of people in the world."
No, it did not.
Though it's you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Allow me to be more specific. There are 1-0 types of people in the world, those that understand binary and those that don't.
That's right. And if you read it and think 10 and don't get it, then you're not one of those people. That's right.
Because my buddy read it and he's like, "Oh, that's funny." And I was like, you know what it says, right? He's like, "Yeah, it says 1 in 10. There are 10 types of people." I'm like, "No, it says there are 2 types of people."
That's right.
What I want to tack onto the tease is because you're teasing. Well, you actually didn't complete that.
Yes.
So it's going to be language
first, culture building. And the thing I found was language are the images we write down of the things we see in our head. And it's so funny how much other culture stuff I came up with just thinking about real basic bare bones language stuff.
You're very excited by this.
See
it in your face.
I had a blast doing it, and I started coming with all these new ideas I'd never really thought of for them before, but I was forced to think about them because it's like, well, how do I write? Just think about why they write the way they do. I came up with their entire class structure, the importance of ordering in their culture. I mean, all of these things that I knew there was a pretty strict class structure, but I had no idea what it looked like.
You hadn't laid it out yet. So language first, culture building tease for the next episode.
Yes.
What I want to also tack onto the tease is a year tease, because Jeff sent me a really awesome initial spreadsheet for upcoming shows, and we've got some really great stuff coming up. Really great episodes that I'm very excited about.
Yes.
So really just stick with us, guys, because we got some great content coming for you. This year's going to be big. I'm excited about it.
It's going to be huge. And one of the things I really like too is one of the ideas that Mike suggested.
Michael.
I'll give you that. Michael suggested would actually apply into the way I've traditionally built cultures, which is the idea of coming up with the norms. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'm not going to even give you any more of a hint than that. But we will be actually covering a topic that he came up with that is literally a direct feed, a way to do that.
Yeah, it's a different mentality to approach creating culture, and there's also just some really awesome episodes. You want me to hand this to you?
Yes.
All right, Jeff is gesturing for me to hand him an object on the table.
And to send you away with before the outro. And as always, make sure to go to Gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com for the show notes. It'll be under podcasting, World Builders Anvil. That's a great place to get all of the information from the episode that you've just listened to and to see all the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Thanks for joining us this episode of the World Builders Anvil. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes, and please help get the word out to your friends about our show. And join me, Jeffrey W. Ingram at Garduel.com, to see the progress of my world and learn why I made the choices I did. And please contact me and let me know the topics you would love to hear in the future. Now strike while the myth rolls high.